Today we're on to welcome Alison Gieschen to the show today. Very happy to have her on. She talks about so many different things, right? And ultimately, it's about living life on your own terms, right? Because we can do so many things within our lives, but ultimately, if we're not living life like we want to, not having agency, autonomy over our own lives, then what is it all for, right? It's about being fulfilled in that process. And it is a process. There's so many things to learn, so many things to do, so many things to become. And she's written so many different books, and she has an amazing story, and she has so many different thoughts on this we can actually implement in our own lives and see the change, which is what it's all about. So, very excited to have her on the show today. How are you?
I'm outstanding, thank you.
Awesome. So, I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into basically taking control of your own life in a sense, right? Like, how did that all start for you, and what are you doing today to kind of show people that in a sense?
Well, I met my husband in a sailboat race when I was before I even graduated college, and that weekend, right before we spent an amazing weekend together. Won the regatta, and as we are getting, he's going back to Philadelphia where he was a marine engineer. I was going back to college, and after this 3-day magical weekend together, we knew we'd be apart, really, really far apart. He goes, my dream is to sail around the world someday. I'm like, mine too. Let's get married. So we did. So less than a year later, his father was a Lutheran minister, and he married us on the country club lawn where we met. And I graduated, and of course we got married. I had to move up where he had the job because I was fresh out of college. And we built a beautiful horse farm because I came with horses, and we immediately had our kids. We got 3 kids out of the way real quick. I had 3 under 4, and life just took hold. And I had an equestrian riding program. We sailed when we went down to visit my mom in North Carolina, and his dad had a boat in the Chesapeake, so we did some sailing, but everything was just kind of put on the back burner. And then fast forward 30 years to when our last child got married, and all my kids were self-sufficient, and he just looked at me one day and said, "It's time." I'm like, "Time for what?" He goes, "We're going to make a 5-year plan, and we're going to do it. We're going to fulfill the dream that we both had the weekend we met." So we did that. We educated ourselves. We traveled to boat shows. We listened to seminars. We read books. And we took a 1,000-mile heavy weather training passage where you go out in the ocean during the trade winds and you sail 1,000 miles so you can understand what it's like to be out in big waves and big winds. And we did that, and that gave us the confidence, okay, we can do this. So we found our boat, sold our house, got on board, and 8 years. We've been out 8 years. We've been to 50 countries and 4 continents, and we've learned a lot about life in that time.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I would imagine like doing all the sailing, it's like probably quite an adventure. You learn a lot in that process, I would imagine.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, what are some things that come up like right off the top of the mind? Like, what are some of the most amazing things that have come up along that journey?
I guess it's a lot about resilience, because the very first time we tried to cross the Atlantic, we got caught. Have you seen the movie A Perfect Storm?
I have not. No.
So it's all about this boat that's out. It's a fishing boat or something, and they get caught between 2 storms. And when the 2 storms converge and press together, it creates really big waves and really, it's actually a true story. You should watch it. It's called The Perfect Storm. And of course, the boat perishes. But we were caught in that same scenario our very first time trying to cross the Atlantic. And the waves got bigger and bigger, and they started crashing on the bow of our boat, and it ripped our dinghy. The life rails it was attached to ripped the whole thing right out of the deck and cast it overboard. And now the dinghy was secured to the mast, and now it's banging against the side, threatening to demast us. And my husband had to put a lifeline on and go up onto the bow, cut it free. Our anchor was banging against the front, threatening to put a hole in our bow, and he had to go up there on the very tip of the boat with these waves crashing and get the anchor secured. And it was like something out of a movie, like that movie I was just talking about. And when he cut the dinghy free and I saw how quickly it disappeared, it like literally in the blink of an eye was gone, just into the waves, gone. And I thought, if he goes overboard, I'm just jumping in with him, because I'm not going to be left on this boat in this storm. I'd rather die out there than, die slowly and terrified here. So anyway, he didn't die. He came back on board, and we had $14,000 worth of damage to the boat. And we had to turn around, go back to shore. So we did a 500-mile loop in 3 days and ended up 10 miles from where we started. So insurance paid to have our boat restored and fixed, but what it did to me on the inside, I'm like, I don't know if I can fix this. I'm not sure that I can ever be the same again, because that was our first experience. So sure enough, we did make it across the Atlantic to the Virgin Islands. And every time the weather started getting a little bit bad, a little bit more severe than it was predicted, I started having PTSD and flashbacks and anxiety. And I got to the point where I'm like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't think I can cross oceans. We got to go all the way around the world. And if I feel like this every time the weather starts to get bad, I don't know if I can do it. So I was getting ready to tell him, I'll fly and meet you, but I can't cross oceans anymore. So we pull into a harbor, and it was like, I'd wake up every day going, today's the day I'm going to tell him. Today's the day. Well, we anchored in a harbor with 100 boats in it. And 3 boats away was the man that took us on the 1,000-mile heavy weather training passage. And that was 3 years prior. So for us to be in the same harbor 3 boats away 3 years later was definitely a miracle. So we went over to his boat, and he goes, so Alison, how's it going? And I'm like tearing up, and I'm saying, John, it's awful. We were in this storm, and this happened. And I'm explaining the whole thing, and he starts laughing. And I'm looking at him. He goes, do you know how lucky you are? And I'm like, no. He said, do you know how many people would have gone back to shore, sold the boat, and never sailed again? He goes, but your boat did fine, your husband did fine, and you are still out here, and the chances of that ever happening again are probably 0. And he was the only person on the planet that could have looked at me and said that to me, and I would have believed him. The man that trained us in heavy weather, and he's written 5 books, and he's been in 3 typhoons, 3 hurricanes and 2 typhoons out in the ocean on boats and survived. So the man knows his stuff. And that saved our trip. It saved our journey. So I'm still out here. And yes, horrible things have happened since then. But we've survived them all. And every time that we make it through a crisis, it makes me a little bit stronger and a little bit more confident and a little bit like, this is a journey of destiny. We are meant to be here, and we're going to get through it. Like, stuff's going to happen, but we're going to get through it.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Like, just cultivating that resilience from within. I would imagine that you have to learn how to be calm under chaos in a sense. All right.
Oh yeah, my husband is a master of that. I'm working on it.
What would you say, like, for everyday life? Like, what would be some things that we can do to actually develop that in a sense, right? Because whatever it is, like, we're dealing with business challenges, relationships. Like, I feel like developing that equanimity is so important, just to be able to kind of navigate within the stress in a sense.
And I guess until you experience what true life or death is, you don't have that perspective living on land. But what you need to do is imagine yourself being out on a boat in the middle of an ocean in a storm and then saying, how bad is this compared to what it could be? Trying to put your life in perspective is really important. And, so for instance, we have a motto: as long as we're still alive, still in love, and still afloat, we're good to go. And people need to define what their important things are and say, as long as I still have this, I'm good. So maybe it's your health. Maybe it's a loved one. Maybe it's, my children or my husband or whatever it is that you have that's really, really important to you. And those are the 3 criteria you need to go on with life. Then you need to stand by those and say, as long as I have this, I'm going to be fine. And you've got to believe it.
Yeah, just having that sense of gratitude, right? Just being able to have that perspective in a sense, and also having this anchor, right? Having an anchor of like knowing that hey, all these things have happened, but hey, I'm good, right? You have this like
Yes,
internal peace, and you're able to kind of focus on that instead of the negative things that could perhaps be going on.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, gratitude is so key. Like when whatever it is, 'cause I feel like what you appreciate appreciates, right? Like you focus on tends to expand, and you kind of like navigate all these things. And a lot of us, I find that we're just kind of perpetually focused on the negative. We're asking these disempowering questions, right? And we don't really realize it's why we're not getting the results we want in life. So I feel like developing that skill is so important.
Yes. Yes, it is.
How would you say we can kind of shift our perspective? Like, because it can be hard when things are going on and all these challenges to keep that, perspective of gratitude. And it's not just to ignore the negative, but it's kind of like, how can we start to shift our mind in developing that sense of gratitude within the storm?
Well, I think that it's important that you have a fallback on something that you love or something that you're grateful for that you can turn to and focus on it. You know, um, and it's going to be different for each person, but you've got to be able to get to where you can go there mentally and be appreciative and be happy and find that happy place. And, um, and if you can put yourself there, then the other stuff becomes background noise, and you can focus on that one good thing in your life, that one thing that you love or you cherish and that you're grateful for.
That makes sense. Yeah. Just kind of like focusing on our blessings, right? Because we have like a lot of things. It can be easy to lose perspective of those when things go wrong. So just kind of
Right.
like have this self-assessment of like, hey, what are all the good things? And just kind of realizing this too shall pass, right? All the challenges that this there's kind of here, I believe, to kind of forge our character, right? And we kind of use these things to kind of build up our sense of self and our confidence. And it's really about perspective and the way you look at it. That's kind of what I find.
Exactly.
Yep. So you've also encountered like a lot of cultures, right? A lot of like different places and all these things. Like, what has your experience been with that, and how you kind of see reality?
Well, that's been a really enlightening experience, let me tell you. Having been to 50 different countries, and um, I probably most of your listeners are from the United States, I'm assuming. And you might think because you go to a Hispanic section of a grocery store, or visits a Chinese restaurant, that I know different cultures. Well, until you've been there and you've lived among them, you really, really don't. And um, what you realize is that humanity is the same. Doesn't matter what country you're from. I'm on an island now with less than 1,000 people, and these people are so happy and so gracious and so kind and so welcoming. We've been stuck here for 5 months because our engine is broken. So we've had an opportunity to really go in and assimilate and be around these people. And we've been stuck in 5 countries now for 3 months or more, waiting for boat parts. And so during that time, we've had to rely on the people who live there. And what you realize is that the human heart is all the same. And all people have kindness and love and really good qualities about them. And just because they have a different skin color, or they come from a different country or a very underdeveloped place, all humans are the same inside. And you just feel this bond with humanity. There's no division of race or color or religion or creed. It's just, we're all one big community living on the same planet. And the more people realize that, the better that our world is going to be.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, as you mentioned, like we kind of think we know different cultures from like perhaps going to a certain restaurant or whatnot, but it's not until we experience it to realize we actually understand, right? And as you mentioned
Yeah.
also, it's like we're all kind of the same in many ways. Like, we're all connected, and we just got to kind of connect to that because we're also different in many ways. But we have to celebrate that because it's a beautiful thing too, right? And just kind of having that awareness, so we can kind of see reality different. I feel like it's an important lesson. So I'm glad you mentioned it. So when it comes to, I guess, traveling and things like that, out of curiosity, like how much are you in different places as opposed to the water? Right? Is there like difference? Are you intentional about that at all?
Yes, there's a huge difference between doing an ocean passage or a long passage and being in a harbor. So our longest ocean passage to date, I believe, is like 30 days, around 30 days. And when you're out to sea for 30 days, um, life is very, very different than when you're in a harbor. And, for us, our dinghy is our car. So our dinghy is attached to our boat. It's a small, boat with a little motor. We jump in it, we take it to shore, and that's how we get around. And so we're able to go to a grocery store, go to a restaurant, or go hiking, or take a tour, do whatever. But when you're out at sea, and there's this quiet and this just in a connection with the planet, it's just absolutely surreal. So because I was in that really bad storm the first few crossings that we did, I had a lot of anxiety, and I didn't enjoy myself. And I felt, when we're out in the middle, thousands of miles from land, I felt afraid. Like, I don't know, I wasn't comfortable. But then as time passed, and we had this absolutely amazing crossing across the Atlantic from Cape Verde, which is a little island off of Africa, off the west coast of Africa, back to the Caribbean. At one point, looked at my husband. I said, how long have we been out here? And he goes, I don't know, about 14 days or so. And I had no idea how many days we had been out, because for the first time, I finally felt like being out in the middle of the ocean was not a disconnection. I was part of that world. The ocean is my home. And being out there, I just felt I felt at peace. I didn't feel like I was in the middle of nowhere. I felt I was in the middle of my home. And all the creatures that are below us and the birds that come and land. I mean, I have birds come and land on my hand in the middle of several times. They come and land on my body. And the world is so peaceful and amazing. And I suddenly embraced it. I'm like, I don't mind being out here. And I've had sailors tell me, I can't stand being on land. I just got to go back out to sea. And I couldn't understand it. And finally, I did. And it's an incredible feeling. You don't have phone ringings. You don't have anywhere to be. You don't have anybody taking your time in any way, shape, or form. It's just you and this beautiful world around you. And the highlights of your day is the sunrise and the sunsets. And they're spectacular when you go out to sea. And sometimes we have dolphins, that will come right at sunset and they'll start diving and jumping around our boat and doing flips and turns. And they're just like celebrating the end of the day. And you just celebrate with them. And then at night, there's a blackness that you just can't experience on land. Like nowhere you can go on your continent that you can experience the blackness that you do when you're out in the middle of the sea. And the stars come out, and the constellations and the moon, and it looks like they're so close you can touch them. And it's just so awe-inspiring. So you spend that time just appreciating being alive and being at the moment and being in nature. And it's more enjoyable than anything I ever had on land, because there's just so many distractions on land in your life that you don't have those moments.
Yeah, it's amazing. I would imagine you had this sense of peace and just kind of connection to life overall.
Yep.
Yeah, because you said there's so many different distractions, right? Whatever it is, there's so many things to be potentially taking our time and whatnot. Whatever it's TV, social media, all these things. It's not like they're bad per se, but it's they're so in our face, right? But if you're connected to the ocean, all these things, I would imagine that it's not as controlling, or you probably don't even kind of think about it because you're just kind of living your own life.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So you talk about storytelling, right? How has that shifted your perspective and just being able to look at things differently, right? Because we all connect to stories in different ways. It's kind of something we've always had. It's we've gather around, just tell stories, right? It kind of changes our way of thinking, and we can learn so much as well through the process.
Yep. Well, it's I guess having less distractions, because the middle 30 years of my life was all about getting things done and catering to the life that we had built. And now that I have time for so much beautiful life experience and reflections and insights, that it's allowed me to be a better storyteller. It's allowed me to, is when you live something, you can put it into words more effectively than if you're just imagining it.
Yeah, because I feel stories, they have a different way of communicating with our brain, right? We can learn facts and all these things, but learning from stories, whether they're real or not, just kind of connecting to what people have done, because we relate to people's experiences in a sense, right? And we can kind of learn from that and see how we can do things better, or just kind of learn how to develop our character. All these things that can be shared through story, which is such a great skill to have.
Yes, and I do tell a lot of stories. I have a travel blog, so and I'm also an avid photographer, so I take pictures and relate everything that happens in our lives. Not everything, but a lot of the important things go into my travel blog. And then on my social media, I do every single day, I post something about where we are or what we're doing or what we're seeing. So it's kind of fun, because I have 3 grown children and 5 grandchildren, and I want them to live vicariously. I want them to be able, I was on the phone when a manta ray was swimming by my boat, and I was able to let my 3-year-old grandson see this giant manta ray, feeding alongside his big, beautiful, graceful wings. And I sent each of my grandchildren have a map of the world. And there's a place to put a pin for each place around the world. So every time we get to a new country, they put a pin there. And so my 3-year-old grandson went running into his bedroom after talking to me and pointed to the French Polynesians, because he knew where they were in the world, and said, That's where boat grandma and grandpa are, and that's where manta rays live. So we're giving them a world perspective at a very young age. And I send them postcards from every single country, a fold out thing that I can make on the computer. And I put pictures of where we are, and I give facts about where we are, and tell them little stories and things, and they can put that in an album and have our world journey when we get done, and everywhere that we've been in pictures.
Yeah, it's like we're giving inspiration to people just by showing what we're doing, right? And we can kind of do things that other people may not have a chance to necessarily. We can kind of connect that way and kind of learn and apply that in whatever way we see fit in our lives, right? Just being able to see that that's awesome. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you had to face transitioning from doing things before on land and farm and all that to kind of the boat and the ocean? Like what has been some of the main things that you had to overcome in that process?
Well, I can definitely tell you the number one is boat parts. I mean, we thought we had a spare part for everything on our boat before we left, because everybody told us it's not if something's going to break, it's when. But we didn't know how often things were going to break. And like I mentioned before, that we've been in 5 countries for 3 months or more waiting for boat parts. It's a constant battle, and it's not just us. I mean, we're in a boat here a harbor here with 40 other boats, and there's probably 10 other boats here who have something on their boat broken at this very moment in time. And it's a struggle because there's nowhere on this island to get those parts. So now we have to, if it doesn't come from Tahiti, which is the closest big place, which you can take a plane and fly there yourself and get it, or have it shipped here, and getting stuff shipped is a nightmare. Like they'll say, yeah, well, it'll take us 2 weeks to get it to Tahiti, and then we'll ship it to you on this island. Well, what they say is going to take 2 weeks turns into a month. And we took our boat part out that was broken, and we sent it to Tahiti to be fixed. It took them 3 months to get the part, fix it, send it back. We put it back in our boat, and it was still broken. They didn't fix the part that they were supposed to fix. So now we're back at square one again. So you just have to... So what we kind of do to overcome the issue of waiting and being disappointed and things not happening when we want is we just say we're always where we are exactly when we're meant to be there. And something usually happens that proves us right. Like something that we didn't expect happens that makes us know we are exactly where we need to be. For instance, the other night we're sitting on our deck watching the sunset in our little chairs, and we look out and it's getting dark and there's a boat out there, and it's supposed to be coming into the harbor. We can see it's supposed to be coming in. But it wasn't coming in. It was just floating out there. And I'm like, man, there's something wrong. And he goes, no, they're probably just fishing. Maybe they caught a fish. Because, if you catch a fish, you got to stop your boat and reel it in. So, all right. So we watch it for another half hour. They're still not moving. And then a sail goes up and then a sail comes down. I'm like, oh, no, they're definitely in trouble. So he went and he turned on our radio, our VHF radio. And all the other boats in the harbor have theirs shut off. And there's no marine presence here. There's no, like Coast Guard or emergency boats. So these people were calling for help, and nobody had their radios on. And I made Dan go down and turn it on. So then we hear pan, 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 pan. We're a boat in distress, and here they were, and they would have been just swept out to sea. But we were at the right place at the right time to get a hold of somebody, to send them out with a boat to go and help these people. So it's like, maybe that's the reason why we had this delay, is because those people would have been in really big trouble had we not been there, sitting there at that spot watching them.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, something mentioned there is like all you have is right now, right? We always kind of focus on the past or the future, but all you have is right now. All you can do is just do the best that you can with what you have in the moment. And just kind of focus your energy towards your actions as opposed to focus on things you can't control, right? Because when you do that, you waste your energy and you start to kind of like, worry and all these things, or things that you really don't have control of the outcome. So just being able to do what you can to stay present. When you do that, you're going to open your mind to different possibilities that may have not been open to you before, right? These things just happen, right? And you may not even be receptive to them if you're focused on the negative type of thing.
Yeah, and you have to want to draw positive energy towards you. And that happens if you live your life that way. If you're not open to it, it's not going to happen. So the more you manifest it and believe in it, the more it happens.
Yeah. How can we start to be open more to possibility within our lives, right? Because I feel whatever it is that may be holding us back, we're just holding on to things, different ways of being, different beliefs, paradigms, all these things. Like, how can we start to open ourselves up to different possibilities of what we actually want? Because I feel like so many of us won't actually give permission to go for what we want in life.
Well, you have to kind of, I guess, change your perspective about life in order to be open to things. Because if it's you live in a shell, you have this bubble around you, and all you are is focused on your life and yourself and your problems, and you don't look around you, and you don't take a moment to, you know, just be open to other things happening. They're not going to happen. You've absolutely shut yourself out from that. So I think sometimes you need to kind of push your own emotions and your own reactiveness down, and you need to just have quiet moments where you look around and take notice of what's going on in other people's lives and situations. That old lady down the street that you see walking out the door and, is burdened with something, maybe just walk and knock on her door and say, hey, I'd love to help you, or just reach out to other people. And the more you reach out and do things, then the more opportunity for you to make a difference happens.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of us are just kind of caught up on things, our problems and all that. But if we kind of get us outside of that and just kind of focus on service and perhaps how we can help, that can actually help us, right? Because we're not so focused on the problem. And if we're so focused on the problem, how can we actually see a solution, right? Because our brains kind of work in a sense that when we kind of give ourselves time to relax and just look at things differently, like we have a default mode network in our brain, right? Which is actually designed to solve problems when you're at rest. So sometimes we just overthink and we just gotta, kind of just chill, right? And so
Yep.
it's not that bad usually. Because like fear, it's like such an interesting thing, right? Because I feel like it can be used as a tool if we know how to use it properly, and we kind of learn from it. Well, if we let it control us, that's when the problem comes, and
Yeah.
we don't necessarily want that. So just kind of utilizing that and being skillful within that is so important.
Yep.
Are there any other challenges that come up for you right now that you think would be worth mentioning? Like anything I need to overcome within that transition, or anything you've learned in that process?
I don't think so because, like I said, we've been doing this 8 years. So we've got a pretty good system, I think, for life. We meet our problems head on, do thinking and problem solving, and just do the best we can, and we don't stress about it. We're learning to be patient and being appreciative for where we are when we're supposed to be there. And we just have faith that this journey is supposed to play out and it's not in our hands. So why worry about it? Worrying about it isn't going to change it or make it any faster or put us anywhere else. So we just kind of go with the flow. And I think that that's kind of, even if you're not on the boat, it's a good way to live your life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just need to start to trust life, right? Trust the process. And we want to rush things so much, and we don't realize that we're not getting what we want. We're not, reaching our goals or dreams, whatever it is. And a lot of times we just have to get out of the way. Like we have to kind of like let life do its thing, and focus on what we can control in a sense, like
Exactly.
our actions. What we can do, and just I feel like giving ourselves a space to think is important as well, right? Because we're so like plugged into constant information flow and all these things, and a lot of us, we have so much knowledge, but we don't have a lot of wisdom, right? We just kind of like, oh, that sounds interesting, that, but we're not really applying anything into our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree 100%.
Yeah, because when we give ourselves time to like think, we actually like, is this something I believe? Is this really true for me? Like all these things, like we actually get to know who we are, right? As opposed to this constant like NPC, right? We kind of like taking all this information, and we basically don't know how to think for ourselves. And when we start
Right.
to think for ourselves, I feel like that's when life we want to actually start to take place.
I think that's very wise, very astute of you to compartmentalize that and kind of lay it out, because it's a hard thing to do, but you have a lot of wisdom for your age.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, NPC, that stands for non-player character, by the way. Just basically,
I
it's
have a gaming son, I know. My son won the world championships for EverQuest.
oh really?
Yep, and he
That's
got offered a
incredible.
job to be a professional gamer, and he turned it down to finish his college career and become a software engineer.
That's incredible. I mean, like, there's so many different things we can like learn from these things, and just I feel like number one thing we knew is be in alignment with our values, right? Like, are these things actually important to me? Are these things like in alignment with our standards and all these things? Like, I feel like there's so many different things we can engage in, but are they truly in alignment with the way we want to live? I think that's the most important thing we can get alignment within.
Hmm.
So, when it comes to sailing, like, out of curiosity, do you find how like the ocean and being I guess out in nature all the time, does that influence your mind in a way that you don't see like on land? Because I feel like when you're breathing all this fresh air and just kind of like looking off in the distance and all these different things, they kind of interact with yourself in a way that is, I feel like you're more in alignment as opposed to being disconnected.
Yes, and I think your connection to the entire planet gets greater because the majority of people have no idea the amount of life that is in these oceans. Our oceans cover 80% of our planet.
Mm.
80%.
Wow.
And there's a whole world down there that is absolutely amazing and incredible. And so we have dive compressors on our boat, and we scuba dive, and we snorkel, and we spend a lot of time in the ocean. And so our connection is just so great because we learn so much about all these different species of life that we encounter in all these different places that we never knew about. And it just opens a whole new world, and it just makes you feel, closer to that connection, which is a huge part of our planet. So it's really kind of life altering to be exposed to that and to learn about it and to just be fortunate enough to have it part of your life.
Yeah, for sure. Just being connected to all of life is so key. Are you familiar with marine phytoplankton?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I did a show on that. It's like, I mean, it's basically responsible for like 70% of the oxygen that we breathe, even on land. It's so critical for life. And I feel like it's very little known, but I feel like taking in like, that is a supplement even. It's like, hey, literally contains every single nutrient that we know about. It's like all
That's
the
right.
vitamins, minerals, and it comes from the ocean. It's incredible.
Yeah, and these giant manta rays, which have wingspans like 10 feet when they get adults, that's all they live on. They just live on. They have these
Right.
big mouths that open up, and they just siphon that phytoplankton. And I guess it's the same with like some species of whales. I guess the sperm whales just have the fibers that they filter the plankton through. So these massive animals that are living just on that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much like nutrients that come from there. It's incredible. And like, I mean, even from the ocean itself, like, being a health coach, like focusing on nutrition and all that, there's so much like nutrient dense things in there we don't even take into account, like, caviar, sea vegetables, all these things. There's so many different things within there. And I feel like the ocean is perhaps the source of life itself. So it's kind of like opening our minds up to that and having gratitude. I think that's important.
Yep, I definitely agree.
Yeah. So being on the boat and, the ocean, all that, like, how has solitude been transformative in your life? Because kind of mentioning what we have before, we're so distracted, we're caught up in things, and we're perhaps not engaging in relationships that we want. Whether like we're not reaching our health goals, our wealth, whatever it is that is important to us, and we haven't really have a sense of who we are. Like, how has solitude kind of inspired you, right? Because I feel like inspiration can also come from, being in alignment and reaching our goals and, kind of like growth and service and all these things.
Well, I definitely have been transformed because I lived my life for everybody else before we came on a boat. I had my children. I had this equestrian program. I was a school teacher, so during the school year, I'm teaching and I'm teaching kids, and then summer comes and I have all these kids coming to my house for my equestrian program, and then I have my three children, and I was never really living life for me. I was living it for everybody else. So now, I have a month at a time out at sea when the only other person I see is my husband, and there's nothing else to cater to. And it definitely has changed our relationship. I mean, I just can't live or breathe if he's not within sight of me. It's just amazing. And everybody's like, well, don't you get sick of each other? Don't you fight? And it's like, no, we're just so unified, and we're like one entity, and we work together, and we problem solve together, and we laugh together, we cry together, and it's amazing for a relationship. It's either being on a boat with somebody is either going to destroy you or it's going to make you stronger. And for most of the couples I know, it's made them much, much stronger and much, much, much closer.
Yeah.
So, um, I feel really fortunate because there's so few people on the planet that ever get to do this, to ever get to experience this.
Right.
And I'm one of them, and it's worked out for us. And um, I'm just really thankful for that.
Yeah. Just building like an incredible team of people and community that we can be around. So important, right? And just like building those high quality relationships with our lives and really like connecting the people around us, like wanting to see people win in a sense, like wanting, to kind of be around people that will be uplifting. And I find that in order to attract those people in our lives, we have to become it. Like you have to become the greatest version of yourself every single day. And once you do that, you can actually like be of growth and service, and you really can serve to your full capacity, right? Because I feel like whoever we're around, we're either a model for what is possible in a positive way or a negative way. And we get to decide through our decisions every single day. So I feel like that can kind of calibrate our decisions, right? Because we can decide all these things, but if we can actually keep the people at the top of mind that we want to serve and help, I feel like that can kind of help us be a better person in the process.
Yes, exactly. And I've never met a more united or helpful community than the people on the boats, because like in this harbor right now, there's probably 10 boats around us from 6 or 7 different countries. And it doesn't matter where they're from or how old they are or how much they've sailed. When anybody in this harbor needs help, every person here would jump and help the other person without hesitation, without reservation. And we can get together as a group and just instantly feel connected because we've all had this shared experience. It's a very rare and unique experience, and it just absolutely binds you together. So it's the most cohesive community of people that I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, it's incredible because that's how things used to be, right? We had like a tribe and all these things, and we just help people around us, and that was the way things were. These are like, we kind of expected to contribute in all these things, and it's a lot more difficult to see that in the modern world. But it's kind of in our wiring, and we start to align ourselves to that. We're just going to feel better overall too.
Yeah, it used to be in our wiring, and I think people have moved away from that, and they build fences and they put up no trespassing signs, and they, only care about protecting what they have instead of saying, hey, what do you need? And that's in the community that we're in, is everybody is there going, what do you need? Not what do I need?
Yeah. Out of curiosity, what's it like? Like, so if you're not on an island or whatnot, like, what's it like not being around so many different people? Is that an interesting experience?
Yeah, I think it allows you to experience what you're seeing on a greater level, because it's just you and nature. Like when we go on hikes, and we might do a 4 or 5 mile hike through the beautiful mountains on this island, and there's nobody else to enjoy it with us. There's no friends, there's no company. But we hiked over a mountain to this little bay on the other side of the mountain, and it's a beautiful beach with the most incredible palm trees overhanging the water, and the beautiful beach, and these rocks all around, and the waves crashing on the rocks. And we brought a picnic lunch and just sat there and enjoyed it. And there didn't have to be anybody else there. We were just there in the moment, experiencing this beauty, knowing we're the only people there. And I don't miss it. I don't miss having others and groups and things. It's just sometimes just nice to be on your own and be able
Yeah,
to enjoy it.
for sure. Definitely. I mean, I kind of want to talk about resilience a little bit more because I feel like that's such an important topic, right? And how I would define that personally is being able to bounce back from setbacks in a way that we can come back to center, as opposed to just letting things kind of destroy us. Uh, I'm curious, like, how would you define it? And like, what can we start to become more aware of to cultivate that within our own lives?
Well, I guess the thing about being resilient is no matter how tough things get, you still have to have hope. Because if you lose that component, then I just don't see how you can get through things. Like, for instance, we were crossing the Pacific, which is our longest crossing to date, 4,000 miles. And we ran into a Chinese fishing net. I don't know if you know about the Chinese fishing fleets. They're out there ravaging the oceans. And they put
Not
out 60
necessarily.
mile 60-mile long nets in the middle of the oceans, and they catch everything. They catch the whales, the dolphins, the sea turtles. They kill everything in their nets. And they're all over out here, and it's a huge problem. And when they get their nets tangled, they'll cut a section of the net away and just leave it floating in the ocean. So sailboats who are crossing the ocean have the rudders that, are beneath the water, and they catch on their rudders. So sure enough, in the middle of the night, we're sailing along, and we got 20-knot winds and, these big waves, and our boat comes to a halt. And we're in thousands of feet of water. So we know we did not hit ground, that something caught on our rudder. And we had just passed a group of the Chinese fishing fleet. And they're on these 200-foot boats, and they go in this big pack. And there's one boat that will process what they catch, another boat to hold the nets, another boat with freezers. And they just rape the oceans and then go back and sell their things when they get back to their country. And so we had to heave to, which is when you turn the boat into the wind and you backwind one sail and leave the other sail full, and it just keeps you turned into the wind. So you just kind of don't move, but you just kind of gently go with the waves, so you can not have to steer and not worry about your boat. So because it was the middle of the night, there's nothing we could do. So we waited till the morning, and then the waves were still huge, and Dan couldn't dive under the boat because I wasn't going to let him go out into the ocean and go under the boat, because if his line broke or something happened, I would not get him back. And we were, like I said, still 600 miles from shore. So he's like the boat MacGyver, he figures he can save the boat from sinking with a paperclip. But he got this big pole out, extending pole, and he put the GoPro on it, and he got it underneath the boat, and he looked at the rudder, and sure enough, we saw where it was all scraped up, where something had been caught on it. But because we heaved to overnight and took the pressure off the rudder, whatever was wrapped on there loosened. So we thought, oh, well, we're all good to go. It's okay. Well, when we tried to turn our boat back and turn on the autopilot was broken. And the autopilot is what steers you across the ocean. And our boat is way big, too big and heavy for us to hand steer, for 600 miles with another 10 days of sailing. But we did. We had to hand steer. And it was so hard to hand steer that I could only do it for 30 minutes at a time before I would literally start shaking. And sometimes I would catch a wave wrong, and the entire boat would turn sideways to the wave, and the entire boat would go down into the water, and it was just terrifying. And we had to do that for 10 days. We had to hand steer. I could do 30 minutes, and then he would do 3 hours, and I'd do 30 minutes, and he'd do 3 hours. And it was a really huge test of our resilience and just getting through a really difficult patch. But I just took it one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. When I got my 30 minutes, I'd literally count 30, 29, 38. I'd literally count down because I hated it so much. And if you would ask me, could you hand steer your boat 600 miles? I'd be like, no, I could not ever do that. But we did it.
Wow.
And that's what resilience is when you hit that moment where you're really tested to say, I can do this. And for me, it was just breaking it down into increments, taking it 1 minute at a time. And we would heave to every night. So we wouldn't do 24 hours a day. We would heave to every night. But we had a good current going with us. So we were making progress while we slept. We'd go about, 5 miles while we slept. But then the worst part was we woke up one morning, and another Chinese fishing fleet had put up their 60-mile net between us and where we needed to go. So we had a choice. We could either turn left and go 10 miles up into the wind and the waves, getting bashed to pieces to get around it, or we could go 40 miles out of our way in the wrong direction to go around them. So we chose to go the 10 miles, and it was miserable, and the waves were crashing over the deck, and the boat was getting tossed all over the place, but we got around them. And then finally, day 29, that island finally came into view, and we knew we had made it.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, there's a saying that says we don't rise to the occasion when we fall in love with our training, right? And sometimes we do need to rise to the occasion, though. We just got to do what is necessary in the moment and kind of make that thing happen. And it seems like definitely did that.
That's what resilience is, pulling out all the stops when it's most needed and finding a way to get through it.
Yeah. What I think about oftentimes is if you have so many different goals throughout the day, so many different things, and we can think about success and failure, right? I feel like the most important thing you can do is remain at internal peace within yourself, have that high quality relationship within yourself, even if you don't reach the goal, right? Because I feel like, if we have something in our heart we know is ours, we just have to not change the goal, but change the approach, right? Change the way we're looking at it, change how we're doing it. But I find the most important win is actually not necessarily the external circumstance, but are we doing all that we can? Are we growing? Are we building our character and all these things? And once you do that, because if you come from life from a place with like peace and resilience, then it's going to lead to external results at some point. So we just got to focus on the internal world, which is going to eventually lead to our results.
Yeah, so when you have that net built in front of you and you can either take the 40-mile rough route or the long, easy route, go for the short, quick fix and get it done. Just get it done, and then you'll be so happy with yourself that you did it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so freedom is something I talk about a lot, and I've like a lot of this like we haven't really mentioned it, but kind of like it all kind of like streams into that what we've been talking about, like freedom, right? Like, what does that mean in our lives, and how can we express it, right? Because I feel like purpose is about growth and service, and a lot of us are not really expressing our full potential because there's so many different things holding us back, and we can kind of use our mind in a sense to kind of steer our lives in any direction that we choose. And just being able to be aware of these concepts is so key. And we can kind of, I guess, navigate that in a more skillful way, right? Because as you mentioned throughout this, it's about living a life that I actually want to, right? Having agency, having autonomy over these things. And that's what true freedom really is. And we can kind of apply that in a way that we see fit. So it's been awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's one thing I want to mention. Like, so when it comes to like the health of the oceans, like, do you see like any perhaps thing we should focus on for that? Because I know it's like so important. It's kind of something that is concerning some individuals. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we've seen places that are filled with trash and a lot of plastic bottles and things. And I think it's really important that people are aware of, you know, trying to eliminate. I mean, plastics in everything, in every single thing and product. From car tires to our clothing to the phone we're holding in our hands or the computers. But when it comes to things that are more sustainable, like filling up your water bottle instead of going and buying bottled water at the store, or buying things in bulk where you can, not have 10 individual packages, just trying to maybe eliminate some of that. And the other thing that we do everywhere we go is we pick up trash. Like if we see something on the ground, we pick it up. We don't leave it there for somebody else to go by and pick it up. We pick it up. And if we see it's like a real problem, like as sailors, we would go somewhere and, a common route that we would walk, and we'd see just people going out in their cars and throwing stuff out the window. So we would get together, we'd get a bunch of garbage bags, and we'd walk down the street and we'd pick up every piece of trash on that road. And maybe it'll fill back in, I don't know. But maybe somebody will see it clean and say, well, maybe I won't throw the bottle out there. Somebody just clean that up.
Yeah.
So, you can make little small steps. And I think if everybody makes little small steps, eventually it's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Small steps, what it's all about, right? We want to do these fancy things, but it's really about the fundamentals and kind of like going from there. And it's kind of like being a model for what's actually possible. We start to do these things and, kind of see results and go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, Alison, it's been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, sharing your story with us, all your adventures, your story, and your insights about how we can kind of like build up our character to kind of stay free, right? That's what it's all about. Just knowing who we are and living life on purpose. So it's been really fun, and I appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you.
So if people want to get connected with you and your work, where can we go for that?
Well, I have an author website because I write a lot of books. I write fiction, nonfiction, children, and adult. So I've got something for everybody. And my website is AlisonGieschen.com. And that lists all my books. And then my travel blog is Sailmates, like soulmates, but sailmates.org. And there I do my blog posts. So when we get to a new country, you get to see pictures of it, you get to know the history of it, and then you hear the stories of us being there. So I put in the good things, I put in the bad things, I put in the wonderful things we see and the challenges that we face, and kind of lay out our story. And then on my social media, like Instagram, Sailmates on Equus, I do daily posts. So I do fun little videos of the manta rays swimming by our boats, or, this pot of dolphins came and spent they're called spinner dolphins. So they jump out of the water and do like 3, 4, 5, 6 flips in the air before they hit the water again. They're these little tiny guys and they're hysterical. And they spent like an entire day around my boat. I did not leave the bow of my boat. I was just like so in heaven that day. And like I'll put together a video of that, or just whatever we're doing and seeing. Like this island is incredible with the tiki sculptures and statues. And this morning when we went up and I had tea on this little hilltop above the harbor with this giant tiki statue. So I've got a post later today, my little video of being up there with these. And the history of that, it used to be a giant fort that's owned by the French, because these are owned by the French. These islands are owned by the French. And there was cannons and everything. And then it got turned into a school and a hospital. And then that was taken down. And now it's just this beautiful tiki statue park. So, like, it's just so fun to see the history between the places that we are. And I share that stuff with everybody.
Yeah, for sure. That can be inspiring. All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.